Hey there physics students, welcome to Educate. In this video, I'll be introducing to you solid state physics, particularly focusing on the introduction to elementary crystallography. Let us start with something that you already know. Matter exists in three main states. You already know that matter exists in three main states. That is solid, that is the liquid state, as well as the gaseous state. These are the three phases in which you can be able to find matter and materials here on Earth or in nature. Okay, so for example, you can have a solid ice, that is a solid, and it can be able to transition to becoming some liquid water, and if you keep on boiling, it can become some water vapor. So these are the three distinct phases of matter. So for you to be able to transition from one phase to another, remember that you need to increase or to decrease energy. So it's either you are applying energy or you are removing energy. So for example, if you start with solid ice is a solid, and it has got a definite shape and a definite volume. We know how much space it occupies. We know the shape of the solid. It looks cubic like, and then you can see that the moment you start increasing the temperature, or the moment you start applying heat to this solid ice will melt, and then we are going to have liquid water. The liquid water would have no definite shape because it would assume the shape of the container, because remember that liquids, whenever you pour them inside a container, they just fill up the container, and then it would have a definite volume indeed, because we are able to find the volume of the liquid indeed. And then if it happens that on this liquid you keep on increasing the energy again, you will end up forming a gas, and the gas, you know that it does not have any definite shape, because the gas particles are just far away from one another, and they're just moving with greater energy since you've already given them heat, right? So it does not have any definite shape, nor does it have a definite volume as well. So a gas can occupy a different types of volume or different size of volume, so it does not have any definite volume. One thing that we need to remember one more time is the particles. When the particles are in a solid, or when we're looking at the particles of a solid, they are bounded together by intermolecular forces. So we have got intermolecular forces that bound these solid particles together, and the solid has got low energy substantially, so the particles end up vibrating in fixed positions. So basically you need to know, according to the kinetic molecular theory, that the particles are always moving, whether we're in a solid, in a liquid, or in a gas. Okay, because there is some significant amount of energy. So even if you see a solid, whether it's cold or whatever it is, the particles keep on vibrating. They've got a small amount of energy, but they keep on vibrating. You can only have a solid that does not have moving particles in an ideal scenario. You cannot have it in reality. That is a perfectly crystalline solid. We call it a perfectly crystalline solid that can only exist according to the third law of thermodynamics. But in actual fact, we need to understand that the particles in a solid, they keep on vibrating around fixed positions, or they vibrate in fixed positions because they are tightly bound to one another with these intermolecular forces. But now when we look at a liquid, the liquid particles are loosely bound. They are not really that much tightly bound to one another, because the liquid particles are able to move around each other. So one liquid particle can move around another liquid particle can move around another liquid particle. This actually allows the liquid to be able to flow from one place to another. But as for the gases, the gas particles move freely in all directions. They are not really bound. There are no significant intermolecular forces that actually bound gas molecules. So usually the gas molecules are free to move independently in any direction. That is why a gas is able to just move radially and just move in different directions. Let's just say maybe you take a gas that is smelling very bad. You just put a gas that is smelling very bad in a room. It is going to fill up the entire room, because the gas particles move in multiple different directions freely with no any constraints. Okay, so now why is this all important? This is important because remember that for solid state physics, we are particularly focusing on the solid state. So we need to look at the solid state of matter. So looking at the solid state, it's better for us to try and see how do we transition from liquid to solid. Just a reminder, The transition from a liquid to being a solid is known as freezing. So whenever you are having liquid particles that are able to move around each other and you freeze them by just lowering the temperature, or maybe put this in a refrigerator, you know that the particles will end up freezing, or the particles will end up just becoming tightly bound to one another, and they're tightly bound with intermolecular forces, causing them to solidify and form a solid. So whenever a solid freezes, or whenever the solid particle freezes, they can either arrange in an organized manner, means that your particles will actually form a certain pattern, and this is a repetitive pattern. So you can see that now your solid particles, they are arranged in an organized manner. You can be able to even mention the shape or state the shape, because you can see that now your solid particles, or these particles that have freezed, they freezed in a manner that has got a good arrangement. But they can also arrange in a random arrangement. Let's just say you freeze your liquid. When you freeze your liquid, and then the particles of the solid, they just arrange in no specific manner. Let's just assume that here we have got some forces that are binding these particles, the intermolecular forces. So this is still a solid indeed, but when you are trying to establish the shape, or when you're trying to establish the way these particles are arranged in a solid, you are not able to get any clear shape, because they are just randomly arranged. So if it happens that your solid particles have frozen in an organized manner, we form a crystalline solid. So the crystalline solid is a solid in which the particles, or particles can be atoms. Remember, the term particles here in this context can refer to atoms, or it can refer to molecules, or it can refer to ions as well. So it can be atoms, molecules, or ions. All of these are just particles. We just give them a simpler term as particles. Some solids are made up of atoms, some solids are made up of molecules, some solids are made up of ions. So whenever you just say particles, you are kind of collectively calling them as just small particles without specifying what type of particle you are having. So basically, in a crystalline solid, we know that the solid particles, they are arranged in an organized manner, or in a repetitive pattern, or in a pattern that we're able to see and see its order in a certain sense. Okay, for example, when you look at table salt, which is sodium chloride and diamond, these are examples of crystalline solids. These ones are highly crystalline, and you can see that their particles are arranged to form a organized pattern in an organized manner. But when you look at the one that is arranged randomly, that is known as an amorphous solid. The amorphous solid, examples such as your glass and your plastic, when you look at the molecules of glass and plastic, they are randomly arranged. They do not have any specific repetitive pattern that you can be able to call out and say, no, this looks like this looks like this shape and this shape. No, you cannot be able to call out anything in this one, because the amorphous solid, the particles are just randomly arranged. So that makes the difference between a crystalline solid and an amorphous solid. So we need to focus now on the crystalline solid. When we focus on the crystalline solid, nature always prefers to make this crystal lattice. So we say this is known as a crystal lattice whenever your solid particles are forming this shape that is an organized shape, or a shape that has got a certain pattern that you can be able to observe. You can say that is known as a what? As a crystal lattice. So the term crystal lattice, it is just that shape that is made by the arrangement of the atom. It's just a shape. It is not really an object or something. Okay, it's just the shape. The crystal lattice, we are referring to how the atoms are arranged. Okay, so this is an example of a crystal lattice. You can see that it's a crystal lattice of atoms that are arranged like cubes. It looks like a cube, right? Because the particles, they can fit into a cube if you were to place a cube next to them. So it kind of looks like a cubic shape. That's a crystal lattice. You can also look at this one. This one is not perfectly like a cube, but it has got a certain pattern that you can be able to see a pattern that these are two atoms, they're connected to one another, and another two and another two. So it has got a certain pattern. And even this one as well is an example of a crystal lattice. These are your atoms at the corners. These purple things, they are your atoms, and then between the atoms we have got some bonds. Those are usually known as intermolecular forces. Yes, so your particles there, at the corner, we usually refer to them as atoms. So the atoms that you find here at the corner, these atoms that are at the corners and at the different positions of the lattice, they are actually connected by what? They are connected by bonds, and these bonds, they actually bind them to one another to form a crystalline solid. So nature always prefers the crystal lattice. It is because basically in a crystal lattice, there is a maximum attractive force between the particles. Because imagine this, guys, if we were to have particles that are arranged in a crystal lattice, maybe something like this. This is a crystal lattice that is having atoms, right? And they are arranged here, they are arranged here, they are arranged here. When you look at their arrangement here in the first diagram, you can see that their arrangement here, it is minimizing what? It is maximizing the force by minimizing the space. Okay, what do I mean? You can see that these atoms, they are closely packed next to one another. So it means that there are less gaps between them. So there are less gaps between these particles. So the fact that there are less gaps, it means that there is greater force between these two particles. Because remember that force is always inversely proportional to the distance between the particles. So we already know that for us to have a greater force of attraction between the particles, they must be closer to one another. So basically in a crystal the crystal lattice, it is most preferable, or maybe let's just say nature prefers to be in a crystal lattice because the particles will be closer to one another, and when they are closer to one another, they will have a greater force of attraction. The fact that they have a greater force of attraction means that they are stable. It means that they've got a lower energy state. You already know the dynamics of it. Whenever two particles join together, they actually go towards a lower state energy, or they go to a lower energy state, and it is the stable state. So this is not the same compared to a lattice that has got too much spaces between. So the crystal lattice, in most cases, it minimizes the space or the gaps between the atoms, because when the atoms freeze together, they kind of clamp together into this organized shape, and this is the crystal lattice itself. So we can just say here, nature always prefers the lattice because it maximizes attractive forces between the particles. And how does it make sure that the particles have got a bigger attractive force? It is because there are minimum empty spaces, or there is a smaller distance between the particles. Because if these particles are clumping closer to one another, in this case, there is smaller distance between them. And if there is a smaller distance between the particles, we already know that we are going to have a maximum force of attraction there. And then this actually results in stability, because basically for a system to be stable, it must have lower energy. And the only way of achieving lower energy in this context, the particles, they must be closer to one another to the maximum. They must be bonded in such a way that they are very close to one another to the maximum of what they can be. So let us talk about the unit of a crystal lattice. We have got a unit cell. So since we say that a crystal lattice has got a repetitive pattern, or it has got a pattern that you can be able to establish, so it means that we can be able to actually take out a building block of that pattern. For example, this is the crystal lattice of sodium chloride. This is the crystal lattice of sodium chloride. Adapted from xp.com, you can see that we're having sodium ions as well as chloride ions as well. The sodium ions are these ones, and then the chloride ions are the bigger ones, of course. And then having these, you can see that this crystal lattice, it is made up of cubes, or it looks cubic. It looks like a cubic lattice. It's a cubic crystal lattice. All right, we are having these, and they are configured in a shape that looks like a cube. All right, like a very big cube. But inside that big cube, we have got small cubes that you can be able to extract from it. For example, if you carefully notice, all of this big shape, this big crystal lattice, it is just made up of a cubic structure, that is containing sodium and Cl minus ions. So it's sodium plus and Cl minus ions. So this is the cube that I'm trying to trace here. Sure you guys can see it. There's a cube there. So there's a small cube, there's a unit cube there that we see. So this unit cube is known as the unit cell. So the unit cell is kind of the smallest building block, or the smallest repeating building block of a crystal lattice. So you can see that this cube here exists in the lattice, and there are many other cubes that look like it. Okay, so we can just say the crystal lattice itself, it is made up of many unit cells. So the unit cell, it is just the cube that is having the what? That is having the atoms on its corners. So this is your unit cell. So this unit cell is a repetitive cell. It is not just a one, but it is a repetitive. It means that we have got many other cubes that have been stacked together or that are next to one another, connected to one another to be able to form the big crystal lattice. And this crystal lattice, you can see that it has got some sodium and some chloride ions as well. So whenever we want to describe the unit cell it is just a portion that we are able to extract from the crystal lattice. It's just the smallest repeating building block of a crystal lattice. We know that it is repeating because we're able to trace that we're having many other cubes here, smaller cubes. If I can just trace another cube here using my highlighter, you can see that here this is a cube, this is another cube, this one is a cube as well. So this cube as well is another unit cell. It's another unit cell. So basically the crystal lattice is made up of many unit cells. So this cube that I've highlighted with the yellow highlighter here, this is another unit cell. So we can just say a crystal lattice, it is made up of multiple unit cells. So that is what a unit cell is. So now the unit cell can be different. Okay, so there are 7 different crystal systems, and for us to be able to see the crystal systems, we are talking about, okay, what is the crystal systems? First of all, we are talking about the shape of the crystal, because this one will look like a cube. This one, it looks like a cube. It's a cubic structure, but not all crystal lattices look like cubes. We have got different or varieties of shapes, and we define those shapes as geometries using mathematics as well. Okay, so we need to look at the different crystal systems by just looking at their unit cell and try to establish what the shape would be, the shape of the lattice. So when we look at the first one that we made an example of, this is the simple cubic. So the simple cubic shape or the simple cubic lattice system. This one, you can see that it is having a cube-like shape. But for us to prove that mathematically, we need to know that for a cube, we need to have an equal distance. So the distance A, the distance B, and the distance C, they are equal to one another. Those are the dimensions of the cube. So it's like your width, your length, and your height, all of them, they're equal to one another. That makes a cube. Like a mathematical cube, we already know that in mathematics, a cube has got equal sides, 3 equal sides. That's your length, your breadth, and your height. All of them are equal to one another. And then we also look at the angles. Whenever we want to describe lattices, we usually use the axis system to be able to describe the angles and how they work. Okay, remember that by convention, we say that the vertical axis is our z-axis for 3-dimensional shapes, and then we have got a y-axis that looks horizontal, and then we have got an x-axis that looks diagonal. So this is the convention system that we are going to use. So we are going to define 3 different angles or 3 distinct angles. We are going to define the angle between the z-axis and the y-axis as alpha. So this angle, we're going to call it alpha. And then we are going to define the angle between the y-axis and the x-axis as the gamma angle. So we have got this angle here, which is the gamma angle. Let me just use another color there. So we have got a gamma angle here. So this is your gamma angle. So the gamma angle for this course that I'm going to be using is going to be the angle between y and the x-axis, and then the angle between the z-axis and the x-axis, that is going to be defined as the beta angle. So this is the beta angle. So these are the 3 angles that we're going to be using to describe each and every crystal system. So the values of these angles, they are the ones that tell us what type of crystal shape do we have. For example, I've already told you that in a cubic, we need to have these 3 sides to be equal to one another. So similarly, for the angles in a simple cubic system, we need the angles to be equal to one another. All right, we need angle alpha, angle gamma, and angle beta to all be equal to 90 degrees. So if all of them, they're equal to 90 degrees, that's going to form a cube. And I'm sure you guys already know that in a cube, all the angles between the axes is 90 degrees. They are 90 degrees for a cube. a mathematical cube. So similarly, in a simple cubic crystal lattice or in a simple cubic crystal system, we need to have these angles equal to 90 degrees, and we need all the sides to be equal to one another. That's your breadth being equal to your length, and your length also being equal to your height as well. And then we also have got the second crystal system, which is the tetragonal. So the tetragonal crystal system is slightly different. This one looks more of a rectangular prism, compared to the other one. So in this case, we have got an equal length and an equal breadth, but the height is different. So if I just define this distance as A, the width here is A, and I say that the length here is B, and then the height is C. You can see the difference here just from the visual outlook of this. The distance between these two atoms here at the base, it is A, that is your breadth. And then when you look at the distance between these two other atoms, it is B, that is your length. And then when you now look at the height, which is along the z-axis, that is going to be your C. So the height is slightly bigger or slightly larger, and is not the same as A and B. That's why for a tetragonal structure or for a tetragonal crystal system, the value of A may be equal to B. Yes, the value of A, the length and the breadth are equal to one another, yet they are not equal to the height. But when you look at the angles still have the same orientation. The angle alpha, the angle beta, and the angle gamma, all of them, they're equal to one another, and they're equal to 90 degrees. So it's 90 degrees between the y and the x-axis. It is 90 degrees between the z-axis and the y-axis as well, and it is also 90 degrees between the z-axis and the x-axis. So all of these angles, your gamma, your beta, and your alpha, all of them, they are equal to what? They are equal to 90 degrees, just like in a simple cubic structure. And then for an orthorhombic, it is also another variation that also looks like a rectangular prism as well. In fact, the difference here is just that the sides are not all equal. So the length A and the breadth B and the height C, they are not all equal to one another. So we've got a different value for the length, a different value for the height, and a different value for the breadth. So that is the difference between them. But when you look at the angles between the z-axis and the y-axis, that is the angle here that we find here, it is going to still be 90 degrees. So this is going to be 90 degrees, this angle. And then the angle between the y-axis and the x-axis, that is also going to be 90 degrees. The angle between the z-axis and the x-axis is also going to be 90 degrees as well. So all of these angles are 90 degrees. So the value of alpha, the value of gamma, and the value of beta, all of them, they are equal to 90 degrees. So for the first three structures, that is how it looks like. That's your simple cubic, your tetragonal, and your orthorhombic. They are all related to one another. They all kind of looks like the same because they look like they are sitting up straight, right? It is because all of their angles are all equal, and they are all equal to 90 degrees. But when you look at structure number 4, so for structure number 4, it is the rhombohedral. So the rhombohedral structure, it has got equal sides for the length, the breadth, and the height. All of them, they are equal to one another. Almost like a cube, because remember that for a cube, the length, the breadth, and the height, all of them, they're equal to one another. So it means that the distance that we find between the atoms here at the base, and then the distance at this other dimension, and then the height that we find as well, all of them, they are all equal to one another, just like in a simple cubic. So this almost looks like a simple cubic, but the fact that when we look at their angles, the angle alpha is equal to the angle beta, but it is not equal to the both all of these three angles, they are equal to one another. Yes, they are equal to one another, but they are not equal to 90 degrees. Yeah, sorry for that. So basically, the angle alpha, which is the angle between the z-axis and the y-axis, that is going to be a certain angle that is not equal to 90 degrees. The angle beta, it is the angle between the z-axis and the x-axis. It is going to be another value also, but it's not going to be equal to what? It's not going to be equal to 90 degrees. And then when you look at the angle between the y-axis and the x-axis, which is your gamma, that one as well is also not going to be equal to 90 degrees. But those angles are going to be equal to one another. So the angle alpha, is equal to the angle beta and is equal to the angle gamma, but all three are not equal to 90 degrees. Compared to the simple cubic, all three angles are equal to one another and they are all equal to 90 degrees. Okay, they are all equal to 90 degrees. But for the rhombohedral, we say that the angle alpha, which is the angle between the z and the y-axis, is equal to the angle beta, which is the angle between the z-axis and the x-axis, and is also equal to the angle gamma, which is the angle between the y-axis and the x-axis. But all of them, they are not equal to 90 degrees. They are non-90 degrees angle. Then now when we look at the fifth crystal system that we have, it is the monoclinic. So the monoclinic structure that we have here, in this one, all the sides are not equal to one another. Just like the orthorhombic as well, all of them, they are not equal to one another. So if we're having the value A here, the value B, and the value of C, the length, the breadth, and the height of this shape of the monoclinic crystal system, they are all not equal to one another. But when you look at their angles, we have got the angle gamma. The angle gamma, remember, we are referring to the angle between the y-axis and the x-axis. That's your gamma here. So this angle gamma here between the y-axis and the x-axis, it is not equal to alpha. It's not equal to alpha, but alpha is equals to beta. And all of them, they're equal to 90 degrees. So what does this mean? Let's just interpret it correctly here. So here, the angle gamma, it is not equal to the other two angles, which is alpha and beta. But alpha and beta, they're equal to one another, and all of them, they are 90 degrees. So we can just say that the angle here, the angles between the z-axis and the y-axis, as well as the z-axis and the x-axis, those angles, all of them, they're equal to 90 degrees. All of them, they're 90 degrees. But when we look at the base angle, or when we look at the angle here at the base, which is the angle between the y-axis and the x-axis, this angle here, this is the angle between the y-axis and the x-axis. This is your base angle, which is gamma. It is not equal to 90 degrees. So by default, it is not going to be equal to the other two angles. So we have got angle gamma, which is not equal to the other two angles. That is what makes our monoclinic structure. And then we go to the triclinic structure. The triclinic structure is also going to have a similarity with the monoclinic one. So the triclinic structure, for the sides A, B, C, all of them, they're not equal to one another. So we've got different values for length, the breadth, and the height. And then when we look at their angles as well, all of the angles, they are not equal to one another, and they are also not equal to 90 degrees. So the angle gamma that you find here at the base, and then the angle alpha that you find here between the z and the y-axis, and the angle beta that you find here between the z-axis and the x-axis, all of them, they are not equal to one another, and they are certainly all not equal to 90 degrees as well. So we don't have any 90 degrees angle in a triclinic structure compared to the monoclinic one. The monoclinic one has got two angles that are all 90 degrees, but for the triclinic, we do not have any 90 degrees angle, and all the angles that we have here inside, your alpha, your beta, your gamma, they are all not equal to one another as well. Then when you look at the hexagonal structure, the last crystal system, or the seventh crystal system that we have here, the hexagonal structure is one of the most significant ones, the ones that we're going to be using quite a lot. In a hexagonal structure, we have got side A being equal to side B. Remember, these sides still represent the same thing. We still have got our length, our breadth, and our height as well. We still have our length, our breadth, and our height. So when we look at the sides here, let me just relabel here. Sorry for that. Okay. So when we look at our sides here, we have got our side A here. We've got our side A here, then we've got our side B internally here inside. I don't know if it's visible, but we've got side A, then we've got side B there. So side A and side B, indeed, they are what? They are equal to one another, but they are not equal to side C. So it means that all of these sides that are found here at the base, all of these sides that are found here at the base, all of them, they're equal to one another. But when you compare them to side C, which is the one that is found along the z-axis, or that is going up vertically, that one is certainly longer. You can see that this is a way much longer distance compared to the ones that are found at the base. So that's for your hexagonal structure. And when we look at the angles, the angle between or the angle alpha is equal to the angle beta. Remember the angles that we're talking about. The angle alpha, it is between the x-axis, or it is between the z-axis and the y-axis. So this angle here is 90 degrees. This angle here is 90 degrees. And when we look at the angle beta, which is the angle between the z-axis and the y-axis, it is also 90 degrees as well. 90 as well. So this is 90 degrees. This is also 90 degrees. But the angle at the base, which is your angle gamma, this angle between the y and the z-axis, just zoom in so that you can see properly here. The angle between the y and the x-axis, I mean, that one is going to be gamma, and that's gamma is 120 degrees. So we have got a 90 degrees angle between the z-axis and the y-axis, and then a 90 degrees angle again between the z-axis and the x-axis. But now when we look at the y and the x-axis themselves, they do not make a 90 degrees angle. Instead, they make a 120 degrees angle. So the angle that we have here is 120 degrees. So this is how you differentiate between the 7 crystal systems. So each and every crystal system has got its own advantage, and it does affect a lot when it comes to the behavior and the properties of a solid and how it reacts to certain physical phenomena. So thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to tune into our next video as we discuss the lattice vector. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends also. Stay tuned.